Thank you for joining us here at the YouTube space on Main. We're really excited to be here at Sundance. We are sponsoring the Shorts program this year. We have this amazing space with tons of programming from panels, events. We have yoga in the morning. And we're actually shooting a daily live show here with Sundance that's airing on their YouTube channel every morning, YouTube/SFF. I'm Nicole Emanuel. I work at YouTube. I'm a content partnerships representative here. We have an amazing panel to talk to you about building your audience and actually raising funds from that audience and using YouTube to do that. So we have one substitution today. We have Lena Waithe from Dear White People taking over for Justin Simien, the director. She's a producer. So thanks for coming, Lena. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Ross Fremer, who's moderating.
Thank you to the lovely Nicole Emanuel. Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming to our panel. How many people here are Sundance Festival first-timers? Oh, great. Welcome. It's a lovely place. So I will give a brief introduction about myself. My name is Ross Fremer. I'm an executive at Cinetic Media in New York City, a film finance advisory company. We work with creators of all levels, across platform, but traditionally in independent film. We've been doing it for about 12 to 13 years. I'm about a year and a half in, and I really focus on kind of our business development efforts and how we're accessing crowdfunding to really empower content creators to both cultivate and maximize their audiences. Our most current case study is Life Itself, which we ran an Indiegogo crowdfunding campaign for through December and January, which just ended. The film is premiering tomorrow night, hopefully to mass critical acclaim. We're very proud of it. Marc, my compatriot over here, helped quite a bit with the success of it, and we'll talk some more, but I will hand it over to him for an introduction, and then to Freddie and Lena.
So my name is Marc Hofstater. I'm the head of film for Indiegogo. Indiegogo is the original crowdfunding platform. It launched just up the street here at Sundance 6 years ago. At that time, and still today, we are empowering filmmakers around the world, 193 countries at last count, funding their dreams, finding ways to get to premiere festivals, to showcase their hard work and engage their audiences at the same time. And obviously that's what YouTube is about, engaging audiences. And I think that Indiegogo and YouTube go hand in hand in that regard.
My name is Freddie. There it is. My name is Freddie Wong. I make YouTube videos and content online, long form, short form, and kind of a veteran, I guess, of crowdfunding campaigns. I've done a lot of helping out with other people's crowdfunding campaigns and our own. We've had two very successful ones. For Video Game High School, first and second season under the Indiegogo competitor Kickstarter, but for third season we're going to be switching over to using Indiegogo for that campaign.
And Lena, are we showing, Nicole, are we showing videos? You want to do that first, or? Can you run the...
This is a clip from the second season of our show.
Great.
Crowdfunding paid for everything except that truck. That was our producer's truck. Crowdfunding didn't cover that.
You got to start somewhere. Lena, over to you.
Hi, everybody. I pretty much, am a producer on Dear White People, and I know we wouldn't be here if it weren't for YouTube and Indiegogo. We started crowdfunding to, honestly, just to raise funds for like legal fees and a couple other small things, and then we surpassed our goal in like 2 or 3 days with a concept trailer, which was on YouTube. So YouTube really that's really where we found our audience, as well as Twitter. But Indiegogo really kind of gave people, it sort of gave us validation that people were willing to put their money where their mouths were, and they really wanted to see something different in terms of like the black art house films. So here we are, Sundance. We premiere tonight. Woo. Hopefully you'll be there. Woo. I brought buttons too. I have Dear White People buttons. I have a few, so I'll try to hand them out to you.
Lena, what's your last name?
Waithe, W-A-I-T-H-E. I do not know what the history is. My father was a Rolling Stone. I'll do the Ancestry.com at some point in the near future.
We'll crowdfund for that.
Yeah, we will. It's a weird last name. I passed the resume test, though, so I'm glad.
Yeah.
Oh, we're going to show a clip?
The tip test. You hit up Jellies for a snack. Your waitress mistakes you for someone who looks like you, black, who once ran up a $30 bill and left a $1 tip. You watch all the other customers order before you do.
Pastrami sandwich on rye.
And then proceed to wait no less than 40 minutes for your food. How do you tip? A.
40 minutes? She's lucky if she gets 40 cents. Okay, you do a good job, maybe see a tip.
B.
She was tripping, but 15% is the least I can do.
Or C.
I reject the stereotype that African Americans do not tip. I will leave 20, no, 25, just to prove that I can.
$100 oofta nose job.
Yeah, that's an exclusive clip.
Wow.
I didn't know y'all were getting all that. Hopefully you have tickets and you get to see what that's all about.
Great. So I'd like to start with just giving a few high-level YouTube facts, just to put everything in perspective. I'm a YouTube user. I'm sure everyone else here is as well. We really use YouTube to leverage our audience for Life Itself, the Roger Ebert documentary I referenced earlier. But let me start it off just to give some perspective. YouTube generates 1 billion unique visits per month. That's big. That's massive. 6 billion hours of video are watched per month. According to Nielsen, YouTube reaches more U.S. adults aged 18 to 34 than any other U.S. cable network. For reference, U.S. cable homes currently reach about 100 million people, 100 million households. That's a huge scale, and I think touches a multiple diversity of ethnicities, content viewers, and the like. YouTube audiences typically behave like television network audiences. They watch during prime time, they schedule their viewing. It's very linear in that fashion, but very interactive at the same time. Very unique platform. I'd like to give you just a brief story of how we leveraged our YouTube audience to cultivate and maximize community support for Life Itself. We came in a little later. Others will share stories who maximized their YouTube or cultivated their YouTube audiences much earlier in their content life cycle, essentially. But we started with crowdfunding first. So we knew we needed to raise completion funds for Life Itself, the Roger Ebert documentary. So we reached out to Indiegogo. We designed a campaign. We knew we were going to do a couple of unique things with Life Itself. We were going to essentially use a platform to stream the film to audience members or donors of the campaign simultaneous to its Sundance premiere. Secondly, we knew we wanted to live stream the post-premiere Q&A to as wide an audience as possible. We knew YouTube was the perfect platform for that. We are now a live stream partner with YouTube. We will be live streaming the Q&A on Sunday night after the premiere, which is a pretty extraordinary thing, and I don't think would have been possible without YouTube support. But I'd like to kick it over to perhaps Freddie first to talk about how he maximized the YouTube audience and then perhaps used other platforms, other tools to both maximize and expand on that audience.
Yeah, so when we first started, part of the thing was like you can make movies, you could maybe do a short.
Just kill my lows entirely, by the way. My voice is just like right at that frequency where it's just like feedback. So you can, when we started out, we had that option. I was actually, you as a sales agent, we actually were doing direct-to-DVD horror movies, which was like They're all really bad. None of those movies show up at Sundance. Let's put it that way. They show up at the film markets where nobody actually watches the movies, but they just exchange money in suitcases for them for territorial rights. But it was a lot of fun. And it was it was very instructive in that regard. But what we realized was one of the weird things about it was just there was no audience building there. Like, we would do something and we'd be like, we know this isn't that good, but we want to hear what people say about it. And it was like where we found comments were like on torrent sites. Like, it would, like, our movies would show up on torrent sites and it'd be like, well, check the comments. What are they saying about it? And then, looking at YouTube and seeing where that is a giant place for audiences, especially a younger crowd, it made a lot of sense to use YouTube as our primary platform to make stuff and put stuff out. When you talk about the audience there, it's a younger crowd generally. It's a crowd that is growing up and has grown up without ever really needing to watch TV. They're on Netflix or Hulu or other platforms like that. It's like a lot of these younger kids, like, they don't watch television or they don't watch movies in the way that even I did. So it's like it's a whole shift in terms of how content's being consumed, and YouTube is very much at the forefront of where eyeballs are now.
So you cultivated that YouTube audience immediately. That was the first thing, perhaps.
Yeah. So the goal wasn't to do just like YouTube short videos and just putting that out there, because I'm a film school snob, so I kind of want to do longer form narrative content. But we realized that, like, it's a lot harder to just come right out the gate and just be like, all right, boom, here's a feature, or here's like a whole TV show that we did. It's a lot harder to do that. And it's a lot easier to start from like, hey, let's start doing stuff that's easy and fast, and like, hey, build an audience there. And once you have an audience, then making something for that audience is a lot easier than trying to build an audience off of something that you've made. That was kind of like the idea. So the first 3 years of us on YouTube was just shorts and viral type of stuff, gaming type of content. And then after that time, we're like, okay, now we can try to do something longer. Let's try and do a feature-like thing. And it was a lot easier to utilize crowdfunding platforms in that way, because it wasn't just like, who is this guy and what is this stuff? It's like, hey, we've done all this stuff. Here's our next step. You guys want to help us out? We had the audience built in the first place, but that was a 3-year process of building that audience to begin with.
Yeah,
Can I piggyback off that a little bit? One, I agree with a lot of what you're saying, and I think, to me, because I know the whole conversation is a lot of people aren't watching TV, they aren't going to the movies as much. I think it's because the content isn't that great. I think executives and studios, being that I work in the system, I'm a television writer, and I go on meetings, and I have all that stuff that I do in LA. But the truth is, the people in these offices they're not on the ground. They don't know what people want. They're sort of like trying to figure it out. So the reason why we did the Dear White People concept trailer was because, again, like you said, we were no-name kids. Nobody knew who we were. It's hard to get somebody to give us money to make a full-length movie. So Justin, having the PR background that he is and being that social media genius, he was like, we're going to do a concept trailer. And we were like, what the fuck is that? And he's like, we were just like, shoot it as if we had a full-length movie. We're going to shoot the trailer. We're like, okay. So that's why we took our tax refunds. Instead of getting new couches from IKEA, we got, the concept trailer. And the thing was, we built an audience that way, and what happened was, then the studio started calling because they were like, oh, what is this? Or this is dope, or this is cool. And we did the same thing with the pilot presentation we did, where I wrote a pilot. Justin directed like 4 scenes from it. We put it online. That got us a pilot commitment from a major network. So what happens is, we sort of use YouTube as a way to infiltrate the system, because we have to prove that there's an audience for what we're doing, particularly for African American audiences, because there's a sort of new genre of black films where they're sort of like moving essence articles, where it's very aspirational and beautiful black people that are digestible for white audiences. So we were like, we want to do something where black characters are layered and they're nuanced and they're multidimensional, and it's very black art house, because white studio heads are like, nobody wants to see that. You're either precious or you're 12 Years a Slave. And I'm like, well, we're in the middle. And they're like, well, there's no audience for it. And the great thing about using YouTube and Indiegogo is that it proves to these executives that there is an audience. And the cool thing is, tonight, they'll all be in that at the library, and they're going to watch this movie, and they're probably going to hopefully bid on it. But the thing is, we had to get there by proving that there was an audience for it, and that's what YouTube really sort of does for, I think, content creators like us.
Yeah.
And then as an extension of that, I mean, crowdfunding, Indiegogo does exactly that. It's a proof of concept, but it shows that when you reach out to your audience, whether it be niche or whether it be a rather growing and expansive audience, that having that direct connection with them, suddenly everything changes. If you don't have that direct connection, you know, if you're making YouTube videos and you're trying to do it, you know, for an audience that doesn't exist, then it's still not going to exist. But you can access that audience, you can access that crowd via YouTube and via Indiegogo, and both of those, you know, companies give you the tools to do just that.
Yeah, any tool that lets you have insight and have any kind of control over your audience is the most powerful tool a filmmaker can have. Because it used to be you walk into a studio and you'd be like, here's my short, and please give me some money. I hope you guys like me. But now it's like when you walk in, it's like if you have an audience behind you, you're not just a single filmmaker now trying to pitch your project. It's I'm a guy who with a gigantic crowd of people here who already support what I do, and it becomes, you know, just on a sheer financial bankable level, makes a lot more sense for those decision makers to do it. And then depending on the scale of what you're doing things, like you may not even need those decision makers to do anything. You know, if you're able to make it at a budget level that makes sense for the concept that you're doing, and you're able to support it with crowdfunding, advertising support, whatever, you know, methods that you have online, then all of a sudden it's like, what do they have to offer you? The negotiation and the stakes completely flip.
I think these are all great points. I think kind of the next point I wanted to bring up is, you know, YouTube is a two-way radio. Consumers, audiences, viewers are demanding the content they want to see. They're supporting it. They're communicating with the artists. I think that's a much more effective way to cultivate audiences and create better content that wants to be seen. And I think Indiegogo is a perfect opportunity to essentially maximize those audiences and continue the conversation. So starting with audience building on YouTube, continuing it to financing, and then through distribution. But I'd like to know, you know, Lena, you bring up a really great point. YouTube is essentially cutting out the middlemen, cutting out the networks, cutting out the decision makers. So areas that were commonly reserved for, you know, private investors, studios, networks are now kind of taking a back seat. They're seeing proof of concept with YouTube audiences. And to be honest, the quality of the audiences are far greater than what networks and studios could cultivate with huge ad spend. So it's really about quality over quantity these days, isn't it?
Absolutely, and quality is something that's very important to myself and Justin and just sort of our what do you want to call it, new Renaissance team. It's really sort of about being great. Because there's a lot of stuff on YouTube. It's like the Wild Wild West out there. Everybody has a web series. Everybody has a this or that. You'll even see it when you're on the streets. The people are going to be handing you cards, and I got this and I got that. The only thing that's going to make you stand out is if what you're doing is extremely breathtaking, and if it's something that we haven't seen before, and if it's worthy of sharing. Because I see a lot of stuff on YouTube, and very rarely do I share things. But to me, if you do something that's cool enough or interesting enough where somebody wants to share it, where they email it to their friends, they put it on their Facebook page, they tweet about it, that's when you know you have something special, and that's when you know you really tapped into something more sort of an underserved audience. And the great thing about Indiegogo too is that they really highlighted our project. They were like, they put us up on their front page, and they're like, these kids are doing a great job. They're raising money at an alarming rate, and so it was a great thing to have their support as well. And then YouTube also was very supportive of sort of putting us on their front page. So sometimes when you do something, these places will take notice and they'll highlight you as well, which then sort of generates a lot of media. I mean, we were on CNN like 3 days after we passed our goal, and Huffington Post and the Washington Post were writing articles and things like that. So that also helps. Once the machine starts to build, everybody takes notice and they sort of pick it up and just sort of run with it. And we've also felt that while we've been here at Sundance as well, where people really want to talk about the thing that everybody's excited about. And I think it's really because Justin's such a phenomenal director, and he's such a visionary. And that's not just me. I mean, even Variety took notice of that as well. So it's really about putting quality on YouTube, because people they don't see so much of it. There's so much stuff out there. So when something good pops up, people take notice.
And to follow up, do you think you're sacrificing anything by not using network model, not the incredible gestation period that it takes to get content through the system, and then hamstrung through the note process and the sensibility process? Are you sacrificing?
We do that ourselves. We sort of have our own think tank. I mean, because Justin's been working on the script, she's 7 years. I got introduced to it about 5 years ago in a writers group. So, and the great thing about Justin is we really like the sort of Pixar model and sort of what they do as a Bad Robot as well, where they really have a couple people in a room working on story, breaking it, working on the script. We use Save the Cat. We're in a room making sure that our content is great. So, you know, we can give better notes to each other than some studio exec probably could. I mean, we're here to listen to it, but we can, and also our job as writers is to decipher what these notes are. You have to be able to take a note as well. So we know how to work in the system and outside of it as well, because we're writers first, we're creators first. So we wouldn't want to put anything out that's not good or great, because we watch the greats and we really always want to hone our craft.
Great. And I just want to maybe work backwards here. Freddie, for episodic content, is it any different? Is the process is it more similar for features? Is there?
Well, it's like no, it's just, you're exactly right, Because like there's good and there's bad with the way that things have been made, and the notes process and that machine that you churn through. Now you got to be that machine, and it's got to be you and your peers doing it, and you have to be, especially because what you're saying is like worthy of sharing is like the one sole metric that matters. And if it's not, because like there's so many other things you can do online. Like if it's not like something that catches your attention, something that you want to share, no amount of hey, tweet this out for me. Hey, nobody will do that.
You get it all the time. I mean, I think to me, my thing is when I send something to somebody, I say if you like it, share it.
Yeah.
If you like, don't do it, because I get them in my, and I'm sure you get it too. Tweet this, share it. I'm like, well, let me watch it first. And if it's and if it's mediocre, I'm not going to share it, because I have an audience now where folks trust what I share.
Yeah.
They go to like, if Lena shares this, or Hillman Grad, which is my handle. It's like if Hillman Grad shares this, then it must be good. So I'm not going to tarnish my reputation. So it better be great for me to share it.
Yeah.
If I do share it, that means I really like it. I really like what you have going on, and I'm sure you're the same way.
Yeah, and it's like there's no reason. It's like if it's not, you can't like use marketing to like slam something down. It's not like opening weekend. As long as we make that opening weekend with this movie, we can make our money back, which is like a lot of like Hollywood is based around that opening weekend number. It's like you can't force people to watch anything online, so it has to be actually good, which means the process of you doing something needs to be better than what the studios do. It needs to be harder.
Absolutely.
You need to be harder on yourself than anybody can be, because that's the only thing standing between you now. It's like, all right, well, anyone can make anything, great, but if you're not really tough on yourself, if you're not surrounding yourself with peers who can sit there and be like, hey, you know what, this sucks, or this doesn't make sense, and if you can't take that note, I see that as a lot of the problems with that's one of the growing pains I think of like user generated online content is like. You can get in an echo chamber, and it's like, hey, this is good, right? And it's like, yeah, this is cool, awesome. And it's like, it's actually not. It really isn't. Like, objectively, this isn't very good. But it needs to be you sitting there and saying that. So for us, it's the same thing. Like, we are, like, it's insane how hard, just on the writing side for Video Game High School that we go through. And it was like the second season it's just like 8 months straight, 6 days a week, 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Matt, and the other two writers, they sit in the room and they go. And like, I think we broke it. I'll go and check on them next week. They're like, we have to completely remove this part of the script. Like they spend it's just as difficult in that room as it is anywhere else. It's not easier. In fact, doing stuff online is harder because now it's you and it's only you that you have to impress.
Yeah. And nothing goes up on that Dear White People channel without, Justin's approval. Nothing goes up on my Hillman Grad channel without Justin looking at it or me making sure it's great. So it's very important that you're branding yourself when you put something up. So it better be good. And also, too, the audiences are very honest. They're going to let you know whether they like it or whether they don't. And they respond quickly. And you know if something's not working. But the great thing is, it's sort of, because also I use Twitter or Facebook as a way to kind of gauge what's working, what's happening. So if people aren't responding to something, we make note of that. If they are responding to something, we make note of that as well. So it's about listening and paying attention to your audience.
It's also important to know that like when they tell you something's not working, it might not be them telling you. It might just be they just don't share it. You'll never hear that. You'll never see that. But you'll know this. You're like, no, this isn't getting shared around, and that's a signal to be like, all right, it's not catching. And what's great about online is like it's not the end of the world for you. You can always step back, reassess, experiment, try something new, try something else, see what else works. It doesn't kill you, but you need to be able to recognize when things aren't quite going.
A bit, but you're fine.
Yeah, exactly, of course. But that's why we got into this, is to get our egos kicked around.
And one of the great things that really compare, how Indiegogo and YouTube are really sort of tied together is that they're both open platforms, and so you can just reach out there, put something out there, ideally your best work that you can, and it will be noticed. We don't judge. We're not gatekeepers at Indiegogo. Come on, come all, let the crowd sort you out. And that's the same thing that happens with YouTube. If you slack and you don't put up your best work, you will not get the views. You will be ignored. No one will share you. No one will care. But if you go out there, you put your best foot forward, whether it be on YouTube or Indiegogo and doing a crowdfunding campaign, it will ignite and you will get the response that you're looking for.
I agree. I think the important point here is how does crowdfunding mirror your efforts on YouTube? How do you complement your efforts on YouTube? If you're building a community, if you're raising money for, let's say, short-form content, pre-production money, production money, marketing money, distribution money, how can you tailor a campaign to satisfy the needs of what it is you're doing, especially for content?
Well, I mean, if you're trying to figure out what stage you're trying to fund your project.
Yeah, is there should you be raising it all at once? Should be raising if you know you're looking to make a 90-minute indie darling heading to Sundance. Do you go out, you raise money for each stage? Do you raise a bunch of money all together?
It all depends on the project. It all depends on the filmmakers. It all depends on the campaign itself. Ideally, if you're trying to raise $2 million for an indie film, which is not large, but it's not small either, what you're looking to do with Indiegogo is you're looking to crowdfund a significant percentage of your campaign. 10, 25, 35% of the project. As we know with Dear White People, it wasn't the entirety of their budget when they crowdfund their campaign. When Freddie runs his campaign, it's not the entirety of his budget. But the idea there is that you are engaging your fans, you're engaging your audience. So you have to figure out how you want to maximize, obviously, the funds and maximize your fan engagement without marginalizing anybody along the way. If you come in asking for too much, you'll alienate people. They'll walk away. They'll get frustrated by you. But the great thing again about Indiegogo is that you are able to. Again, it was the same thing with YouTube. Is that you're able to craft your campaign as you go. If you see a change or you're getting these comments and you want to respond and you want to shift momentum in a different way, you have the freedom and the ability to do that. YouTube is one of our partners. Many YouTube top creators have used us in the past. Smosh, Toby Turner, Hannah Hart. They've all been very effective taking their audiences and bringing them to Indiegogo and vice versa. And obviously Freddie now is going to do the same. And again, every campaign is different, but the great thing about it is you have opportunity to change and adjust as you go along.
You got to sell your project. And let's say I want to sell my car on Craigslist. If I just do a text description, I ain't moving that car. I should take some pictures. You got to get some video of that car. Then now people are going to buy this car. But if my crowdfunding campaign's like, hey, we got this script and we got this idea, it's like, all right, there's nothing for me to latch onto as somebody who might potentially donate to it. There's nothing for me to be like, this is interesting, this is something I want to see. But if you've now done a trailer, or now you've said, hey, here are actors, here's some concept art, here's where we're shooting, here's the more that you can do to sell the project that you can get done beforehand, the better you're going to be able to pitch that, essentially. You want to have as complete a pitch as possible, but you're not pitching to network executives, you're pitching to the public at large.
And also interacting is super important as well. I know I'm one of the people on the Dear White People Twitter and the Tumblr and like Facebook. Whenever somebody hits us up, I always try to respond as much as I possibly can, whether it be just sort of saying thank you or responding to messages if they have questions. And a lot of people have questions about the movie and how, where we made it and all this and that. So I always try to respond because when people feel like you're having a conversation with them, they're a lot more, they're willing to really kind of stick around and feel like you give a shit. Otherwise, they're just like, oh, you're just using me for my money and da-da-da. It's like, no, it's like these people, to me, like that's what we keep saying Dear White People is not just a movie, it's a movement because it really is sort of a movement of sort of an old genre sort of making a comeback, and it's also the people really being a part of this movie because they really are. I mean, this is really their success. Like they're just as excited all over everywhere today that we're premiering at Sundance as we are. So we've been doing a lot of communicating today as well on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all that jazz. So, I think interacting is super, super important. You got to talk to your audience as well.
Yeah, our experience with life itself was quite similar. We only got as much out of it as we put in. It took a lot of effort. It's not just a tweet here. It's not just a Facebook shout out there. It's really engaging with your audience. Particularly for our campaign, what we centered the campaign's concept around was really this idea of pre-selling content to your eventual consumers anyway. So we offered them the opportunity to pre-buy a 2-week stream of the film for $25. So anyone who contributed to the campaign for that level or above, that's essentially what we did. And people came out in droves, and I think almost everybody purchased at least a $25 campaign tier, so everyone will be able to see the film simultaneously. What I'd like to put to the panel is, how is distribution evolving for some of this content? I think Freddie's been quite experimental with his model, especially for other web series content. I'm not sure if there's any other case studies you'd like to point to, but I think distribution is really being impacted, but I don't think it's necessarily being cannibalized or disrupted. I think it's being complemented in a lot of ways. So you may see some distributors out there who may, think crowdfunding is not for them, or it's disruptive to their old model, but in effect, it's really created a bigger pie for a lot of people, and I think that's an important note that perhaps is not being recognized by the larger community, especially the old model of traditional distribution release, where people try to hold back rights, and scarcity is a big issue. It's about exclusivity.
You're right, so windowing, so you got basically two things. You got television show length stuff, you have feature length film stuff. Television show stuff nobody's really paying attention to until you got like 18, 22-minute episodes to begin with, so we'll leave that out of this discussion since we're Sundance. And we're talking about feature film stuff. So it's funny because first season of Video Game High School was basically 2-hour feature film that we cut up in various formats for the web. Which, by the way, if you're writing and your structure is good, you can do that. You can do that really easily, which was great with season 2. Season 1, which was a 2-hour movie, is this contiguous movie which played. It played as 5/22s, which played because it was a 5-act structure, and also played on a act break beat, 9 episodes of varying lengths online. So when it came to 2-hour movie, so one of the advantages that we had was when it was split up online, it was in this non-contiguous form. When we turned around and said, hey, Netflix, hey, international distributors, this is the same content, but here's the director's cut, and it's a contiguous version. It's a version that is not online. It's a version that you can't see online. Because obviously, again, anyone who's paying for your product is looking for something else that they can get out of it. So it's very easy to say, look, we didn't sell, we may have sold 2,000 DVDs on our Kickstarter, and a lot of times, DVD distributor, they'll be like, that's 2,000 lost sales for us. Like, now all of a sudden, I don't really want to distribute this. But you flip it around and you say, well, no, here's the director's cut. We're going to give you a version of the DVD that has more stuff than went out to the Kickstarter guys. You have to make products. You have to make SKUs that you can sell. Because again, you're selling things now as a filmmaker. It's Sundance. It's the creative side, but it's also the business side now. And it's like you have to package your content in a way that makes sense for it. YouTube has ability to geo-block certain territories if you need to go down that route. But it's an understanding of like, look, they want to get your content. They want exclusivity on it. They want to be able to make their money back because they're paying you money for this. But whatever money they're paying you for your movie, they expect to make more than that. That's how. Otherwise, they wouldn't have paid you for the movie in the first place, right? So you have to be cognizant of that and be able to do business and be able to be flexible and say, okay, we know that you want to put this out, and there's a window here. Okay, let's figure out a way of doing that doesn't intersect and doesn't conflict with what we're doing on the crowdfunding side, because the crowdfunding side is what's making this product possible in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dear White People was a really great example. If I'm correct, last I saw, there's over 1 million views for the concept trailer.
Yeah, and that was a campaign that Justin was so smart of doing. We wanted to retire the concept trailer because we have a new cast that's in the... Look at some of our cast members right there. Hi. They're in the movie. Yay. They're in the movie. Yeah, look, we'll see you later. See you premiere.
But Lena, so
we retired the concept trailer, and so as a way to kind of get over 1 million views is because we're like, look, we're taking it away, we're taking it down. And so that kind of got us over that edge.
But the great thing there is that how many contributors were to the campaign?
Oh, geez, I don't remember.
But it wasn't a million.
No.
And that's the great thing is that people go, well, some closed-minded distributors may say, as Freddie was saying, well, we want exclusivity. I don't know about this crowdfunding campaign. It's going to, people are buying streams of your film. How are we going to get them into the theater? How are we going to get them to buy the film, download it online? Are we going to watch it elsewhere, Netflix, wherever? But the reality is that you're creating the audience first, and then expanding it later.
Absolutely.
So it's about you're building buzz, and people are people are going to see Do Right People because they heard some great things coming out of Sundance. They saw that they're great, the 1 million views on YouTube. So that campaign doesn't stop with distribution.
Right, word of mouth is very helpful with that.
And one last point before we turn it over to Q&A. The reason we chose Indiegogo over any other competitive site was the amount of freedom and opportunity we were given. There was no judgment, there was no curation, there was no telling you yes, no, this is how it's done. We were given carte blanche in terms of experimentation, and I think we could have as easily failed as succeeded, and to our own luck and destiny, we succeeded quite nicely, and hopefully tomorrow's premiere proves that point. But we've been really excited, and we hope to do a lot more with Marc especially.
I appreciate it. And one of the things I want to point out is that, again, speaking about the freedom of Indiegogo, we don't have a proprietary player on our site. Most of our campaigners, most of our filmmakers, the vast majority of them utilize YouTube to push out their pitch videos, and then they can come back and start replacing them with update videos and so on and so forth. That's a part of the freedom. And just jumping back for a quick second about distribution, again, with freedom and options, presenting options to our filmmakers and to our campaigners, we're working, we're going to be working with, we're going to be looking into distribution. And obviously we'll expand upon that. There'll be an announcement coming forth soon, and we'll be talking about that. But we're really excited by, again, the opportunity to be an open platform, much like YouTube. We're huge partners, and I think we're only be bigger in the year to come.
I'm a fan.
Yeah, me too.
So, Nicole, how should we turn over question?
So it seems like a theme for you guys throughout the panel has been balancing the role of filmmaker and marketer, because so much of crowdfunding is getting people to find it out. You spoke really eloquently about how you use social media. Do you find that a conflict? A lot of filmmakers really just want to focus on being a filmmaker. Like, what do you think the ratio is for yourselves as filmmakers?
I think we're moving past the time where we can specialize anymore. I think the world is way too complex and crazy now, and that you have to be, if you want to focus, again, I'm not saying you can't just focus on, let's say, being a director of photography or just directing, but you're starting to tie yourself down, you're starting to hold yourself back if you don't take the time to understand at least and explore those other aspects of filmmaking, because so much of it now is coming to the creator side. There's so much freedom and so much power to the creator that now that creator individually and as a small collective needs to have those same skills that you would have had, that would have normally been outsourced out to a studio or some other group of people. So now you need to do that. And granted, you can function if you just want to focus on one thing. It's a lot harder to, and I think frankly, it's something that you owe to yourself to understand, because then at the end of the day, what we would like to do, the end goal ideally, I think, is to be able to make a living off of doing what we love doing, right? That's like the basic kind of like level that you want to get to. So if you want to be able to make a living, you have to be able to understand the business side of it. You have to understand how money flows and how does this work and how can you make a living doing it.
Yeah, and no one understands your audience better than you, I think. So you really want to know how to really speak to them and market to them. Because Justin did something really smart. He went to film school, and then he immediately got jobs in PR right afterward, because he said he didn't only want to learn how to make a film, but he wanted to know how to sell his film as well. So I think that's something that a lot of filmmakers sort of don't do, but we wouldn't be here if it weren't for his time in working in publicity and PR, just because he knows how to sell a film. We really take our orders from him. We have weekly meetings. Well, now we have a bunch of meetings and phone calls for other reasons, but really we would have new media conference calls every Wednesday, and we would talk about new ideas about how to interact with our audience, how to do a new video, we would do Token Tuesdays on Facebook. Like, we would celebrate Lisa from Saved by the Bell. We'd celebrate Ice-T on Law & Order SVU, things like that. Like, and then when we do Throwback Thursdays, where we throw it back to, Do the Right Thing, like we throw it back to Love Jones. And so these are campaigns we came up with by sitting in his living room about how to get people engaged. And we knew while we were doing that other filmmakers aren't doing that. And you know what I mean? So it's like we got to really be a step ahead of the game, and that's one of the reasons why I think the campaign has been so successful.
And you're talking about Freddie, you were talking earlier about not working in a vacuum, and the idea is that in 2014 you don't want to work in a vacuum. You want to be able to access your crowd, your fans, and social media is an extension of that. If you were to, you can be a filmmaker who just, ignores it all and just goes off, in a small town somewhere, shoots an indie drama, and that's totally cool. But ultimately, you want to cultivate an audience. You want to have your film seen. Nobody wants their film sitting on a shelf. 80%, if I'm correct, of the films that are showing at this festival may never see the light of day because they're not going to get traditional distribution. And that's going to be unfortunate. And they'll find other ways to have their film seen one way or another. There's a lot of great video on demand opportunities. But even still, I think that it only benefits a filmmaker to be engaging in social media because it's going to pay off down the road.
Like right now, as a filmmaker, you have more access to your audience and more access to ways of distribution than you've ever had in the last 100 years of film. Because otherwise, it was all gatekeepers, it was all middlemen, it was all theater chains and studio owners, and now you don't really have that. You can get around that. So if you don't take advantage of that, it seems like, I don't know, you're kind of living in the past. You're kind of like not taking advantage of the one thing that you have at this point in time. And I think it's myopic to not take advantage of every tool that you have available to you, especially because they're unprecedented at this time in terms of the whole last 120 years of film history.
And to that end, having a great team in place also helps, at least with us.
I have a question on building your audience. We have a feature documentary we're making about the burlesque business, and we just launched our Indiegogo site, just started it this weekend with Sundance.
Congrats.
Thanks. And we're also have a trailer of it on YouTube, so we're trying to use both. Do any of y'all have tips for any of us here on like how to build your audience and kind of like get the word out outside of your own network?
When you say burlesque, what do you mean by that? Like what is
the old-time burlesque, like the Gypsy Rose Lee era, back in the 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s?
I mean, honestly, the best way is if there's someone who has a huge following on Twitter or Facebook or maybe even Instagram, if you can get them to be interested in it and say, hey, because say somebody, I don't know, let's just say, for example, I don't know, I'm just throwing out Julia Roberts right now. Say Julia Roberts loves burlesque stuff, whatever, and she hears about it. And say she were on Twitter and had 2 million followers. If she saw it and like retweeted it to her followers, then you've kind of expanded. And that's a big example, but that was something that sort of happened with Dear White People, where people like Questlove and like even like Anika Noni Rowe, like they sort of found out about it, and they would retweet it. And they have a lot more followers than we do. So a big thing was to kind of get on Twitter and like tweet the people that we thought would be interested in our product, who had a lot of followers, and they would retweet us. So that was a big thing. Even Issa Rae, who has Awkward Black Girl, she was one of the first supporters as well, who has a gang of followers on Twitter. So it was really about who do we think would love this thing that has a big presence on social media, that they may then share it. So that was a big thing for us, and we were very lucky in that a lot of people who were people of note, particularly people of color, really liked what we were doing, and they were like, yo, we dig this, we're gonna retweet it. So that's kind of a way.
Yeah, your biggest advocates are going to be, be your crowd. So you got to access them and get them on your team and be the ones to help, have them be the ones to help promote your campaign in the biggest way possible. Whether it be a celebrity or just a heck of a ton of people, doing it all on your own and just hoping that you get the eyeballs isn't going to be the only way to do it. You have to engage as many people as you can. Don't be shy. It's when you're trying to get a film financed, and even the traditional sense is that you don't go to one investor at a time. You want to try and reach, or one investor total, you want to try and reach as many people as possible. And so, same thing with casting. You meet as many people as possible until you meet the right one. And so with crowdfunding, with engaging your audience, you reach as many people as you can, and then you find the answer.
Yeah, and be strategic.
Yeah.
Nicole, do we have time for one more?
By the way, burlesque is tough. It's a smaller niche. I'd recommend that I think you pound ground. I think you go to burlesque shows and postcards, because I think the crowd that really would support that's not necessarily on YouTube, but you need to find them in real life, and they are out there and they're going and frequenting these types of shows. So throwback shows, find major cities, get a street team together, and start handing that out. I think that's probably your best bet as a starting point.
If you're new about putting a film together, would it help to have somebody that has some kind of credibility to give you that step up?
It never hurts, but nobody knew of Justin before his campaign, and so it honestly comes down to what are you doing, how are you presenting your material, your content, what audience are you accessing, what crowd are you accessing, how are they engaging. yeah, sure, it's great to have us a grandfather, if you will, or a grandmother to support the campaign and be up here. Yep. But ultimately, you're the one. It's your project, so it should be your voice. And that should be the way you push it out.
Right, and we didn't get that grandmother or godmother until after Stephanie Elaine, who's our executive producer, who produced Boys in the Hood and Hustle and Flow and Black Snake Moan. She saw our concept trailer and just called me one day unceremoniously and was like, I want to be a part of this project. So again, you're right. I mean, you're not going to get that person until you've proven that yourself or your project or made it interesting. So you got to kind of do that work. And Justin was just sort of really talented enough to put out this concept trailer that people really responded to that got us a great executive producer.
With like, as you mentioned, everybody's got a YouTube channel. Everyone has videos or something putting out. So unlike theatrical releases, which is huge competition, with YouTube, the audience member can watch it anytime they want, as many times as they want. So I'm wondering, when you're producing these videos, is competition with other people even a factor necessarily, or is it just about what you make and for who's watching it?
Competition is actually, I think, more on YouTube, because on YouTube you're fighting the rest of the internet. Like Wikipedia, I use Wikipedia like crazy. Wikipedia is like destroys most YouTube videos in terms of like things that are interesting to me. So competition is huge. You have to be able to get above it, and the only way you get above it is by making something that's shareable and something that's actually good and something that's actually worth watching, which is a lot harder than it might seem. It's the lure of YouTube and user-generated content is, anyone can go and anyone can put it up. It's like, that's true. But because anyone can do it and because anyone can put it up, there's a lot of stuff out there, and they do that. So now you're fighting against everyone.
Yeah, we competition wasn't a thing. I mean, I'll be honest, we didn't expect to have 1 million views. That's not, I don't know. Maybe some people do videos and say, I want to have 1 million views in a week. That wasn't our goal. We did the concept trailer because we wanted to pitch it. We wanted to get in rooms in front of executives and say, hey, we want to make this movie. That was the point of it. And that's what we even gave Shadow and Ag, which is a blog off of IndieWire. They were like, can we put it up on our site? We were like, okay, cool. So we gave them the exclusive, and it kind of just sort of fluttered about. To me, when it comes to competition on the web, there's no, you're just throwing it out there and you're saying what happens. You can't think of it that way. I think for us, it was really, we wanted to put together a really cool concept trailer that got people talking, but we never in a million years thought it would do what it did. And I think usually when you go into it with that mindset, just hoping, you can put something great out there, people will respond to it.
Yeah, the mindset should be make as good of a thing as possible.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
First of all, thank you guys for doing this today. As a communications student, I'm looking at crowdfunding, and especially the rise of the popularity, especially with looking at Sundance this year alone. There's over 20 projects that were somehow crowdfunded, whether it be the whole thing, the post-production, whatever. Do you guys see that becoming a bigger trend going forward, especially with now you have movies like Zach Braff getting into it, even though, of course, originally wasn't made for that, but you have this bigger audience that are looking at that.
Yeah, probably because studios ain't paying for it.
and independent financing companies aren't what they used to be. So that number of crowdfunded films at Sundance has grown exponentially over the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. And it's only going to grow further, especially as campaigns become much more complex and intelligent and well-designed. I mean, Freddie is an example of how to freaking kill it, in crowdfunding. But he's also great with business. And so, we'll see, really smart films coming out. And then that's when they'll start showing up even more at Sundance.
And speaking from a more business perspective, I would say crowdfunding is now a primary step in crafting the finance plan for movies. It's a component just like any other private investment, whether it be studio or individual. It really complements the structure of movies now. And in fact, crowdfunding creates bigger movies. So once you validate yourself, whether you be on, a do-it-yourself campaign or a curated site, that really elevates the campaign's notoriety and validates it for the community. And I think distributors, and I think financiers especially, see that validation and buy in, and that kind of builds a consensus across the business. And for us, it's very helpful because we're sitting at the middle of it and we know kind of how to communicate the idea of crowdfunding generally. Because
the games industry has pre-orders.
Exactly.
Now we got pre-orders for movies, and all the financiers are like, wait, you mean I don't have to put up as much money? So yeah, I think crowdfunding is going to be huge because the people who normally put up money are like, wait, I don't have to open up my wallet? All right.
This guy has that. Oh, right here, the green.
So obviously, an audience isn't built within just a couple of days. So I'm just
at least
wondering,
an audience that you want to keep around.
Right. Well, yeah. Right. So I'm wondering what kind of timeline would it take to develop an audience that is going to be loyal and is going to be with you? And obviously, doing multiple projects, you build an audience because with each project, you bring more of an audience with you. But what's kind of a rough timeline that may be expected, or that maybe at least is an average?
See, I disagree with you because I think that you can. I've seen short films come out and it's like, whoa, this was really good, and then like a week later, you're like, hey, did you hear such and such a director is like brought them under their wing or whatever that is. You know, it's like, so that happens. But again, it depends on the content. It depends on what you're making. You can build an audience with something that's really good and maybe be able to transition into sort of doing this stuff very quickly. But you really don't know until you just start making stuff and just start making stuff good. So I would not be concerned about the timelines. I would be more concerned with execution, and the timeline will play itself out however, it will. But that's not, you have no control over that.
Yeah, there's no, I mean, like, we would have never known what the rough estimate was. I mean, sort of Dear White People definitely built over time, and we've also accumulated more fans over time because we have to give people time to find the project. I think if there's something like very specific or a particular story you want to tell, people will find it and they'll, reach out to you. They'll tell you how it affects their lives and why it was so impactful, and you'll have those conversations, and it just sort of builds. And it's sort of, I think Twitter is a good example of that too. Like, it takes time to get a certain amount of followers because you gotta tweet, you gotta interact, you gotta do a thing. It's almost like building a relationship. Yeah. It takes freaking time and exhausting.
And the thing about it is, like, I'm gonna make a very crass analogy, so I apologize in advance. I think building an audience is like a bowel movement. You want to keep it good, and you want to keep it regular. So, having one video and then doing a video maybe 3 months later.
That's true.
That doesn't do you any good. It's like if you're able to do something once every week, and again, I'm not talking about bowel movements anymore, but if you do something really great every single week, and they know your audience is going to tune in on Tuesday or on Thursday for that video, they're going to be there, they're going to be there, they're going to be there. And then at that point, when you start seeing there's a momentum there, that's when you can start adding in more videos, behind the scenes, whatever. Just keep building and building.
You got to feed the beast. Like, don't get lazy. Like, even when we were filming in Minnesota, we definitely were sort of trying to shoot behind the scenes stuff and letting people know, like, hey, we haven't gone away. This is what's going on. Updating them on the project, because that's the thing. If you have something cool, folks want to know, when can I see this? Is it going to be a full-length thing? Is it going to be a TV show? They're going to have questions, and those are questions you definitely want to get, but you definitely want to be able to answer them as well. So you have to stay on the grind. It's a constant grind.
Yeah, our campaign ended about 2 weeks ago, and we're still going as strong as ever. So I would encourage you to just think long terms in terms of how you're talking to your audience, even after your campaign is over.
Yeah, I'm a filmmaker on the older side, and I'm really afraid of that grind. Like, I really don't want to get involved in that communication just because I'm like, I got no time already. So my question to you guys, and if we had time, I'd ask for each of you, maybe we'd do it really quickly, like, how do you interact, how do you integrate that grind into your life? Do you guys do it separately? Do you have segmented times when you do it? Are you always doing it?
All day, every day. This is like the longest I've not been on my phone.
It's not encouraging.
I mean, like, I'm like constantly. Like, on that, I have Twitter. Like, I have my Twitter handle. I have Dear White People, because I do all the Dear White People stuff. Like, if you ask a question, Dear White People on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, I'm probably responding to you. So I'm always on my phone, and I will respond to people almost immediately. Like, with this thumb, it's just like, here we go. Thank you so much. Okay, cool. We'll see you later. Come to YouTube House. Okay, we're going to premieres tonight. Do you have tickets? Do you have buttons? What do you need? Okay, I'll get it back to you. Hold on. But the cool thing is like, I want people to feel like when they walk around and say, hey, did you tweet Dear White People? They hit me right back. Or you'd be surprised at people saying, thank you so much for the follow. follow. Thank you so much for responding. Thank you so much for getting back to me. Thank you so much for answering my question. Because the truth is, that's the difference between us being at Sundance and not. That's the difference between us hopefully getting into a theater and not. It's really the audience. Like, you have to, it's like a marriage. It's like if you ignore your wife, she's gonna roam. So it's like, we're paying very close attention. We're doing date nights, we're getting gifts, we're giving flowers for no reason. We're playing Luther, you know, when she comes home, there's candles lit, the bath is being run, and all that. It's like, we have to like love our audience and those people because it's like, without them, as cheesy as it sounds, there's no us. So it's my job. I mean, if it's 2 in the morning and somebody tweets us, I'm like, hey, thanks so much for the support, we appreciate it, you know, blah, blah, blah. That's what it is. And you know, it's like, that's a part of it. It just is.
You don't have to all do it yourself, by the way. You know, if as a filmmaker, you know, it's a collaborative thing. And now
there's a lot of producers on white people.
The collaboration now includes people to also deal with the social side, understand how do we get this project out there, the PR side of it. You used to be the studio handled that, and it'd go elsewhere, and all the marketing and all the PR was some dude, you know, sitting in a cubicle somewhere doing it for your movie. Now it's got to be you or people that you find or people within your team.
Yeah, you can get interns too. Like, I mean, we do have interns as well. But I mean, like, honestly, like, because we can't do everything ourselves, but if there's some kids that want to be filmmakers and like dig you and like what you're doing and say, hey, I'll come tweet out for free, like, how, like, start. I mean, do that.
Take it. I was going to say that you can, one of the great tools that you can have is that you can, I operate I work not just alone, but a team of us work on the Indiegogo film Twitter handle. I have my own Twitter handle. I'm growing my audiences. It's not as nearly as large as these guys. But you know, the one thing that I do is to manage that and make sure that, again, I'm having those regular updates and those regular tweets, is that there are all tools out there to, you know, schedule them. There's a lot of different tools to do that, and that's very helpful. And then at that point, you're just responding to people's tweets. You're not, you know, finding a time to craft what am I going to say this time, or what article I'm going to share this time. You spend maybe half an hour at night, you put those together for the next day, and then you're on your way.
I would preface my response with, I love the grind. I can't get enough of it. But, you know, let your supporters be your evangelizers. Let them do some work for you. Let them communicate. Let them spread the messaging. And there's no alternative other than to seed the messaging and control it with a positive idea, but let them help you. And I think encouraging that behavior is really what it comes down to, what Indiegogo specifically does in terms of encouraging people to pre-buy your content and then to promote it and support. They're really your creative investors. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. So you need to manage the communication, but allow them to help. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
everybody.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you guys so much for coming and being an awesome and engaged audience with really great questions. Thank you, Lena, Freddie, Marc, Ross, for being a part of this panel and speaking so passionately and showing how you can use your audiences that you have to work to build, but you can use them to empower you with creative freedom and you know, the ability to own what you're doing. So thank you guys so much. We have actually a reception here for a little while if you want to hang out. And then downstairs we have programming every day here from 10 to 3. We have YouTube employees here if you have questions for us. We have either these staff badges on or t-shirts. There's yoga in the morning. There's panel schedules downstairs. So come check us out. And thank you everyone for coming.